our author's centralization of the political power, and to the transformation of the state, by substituting self-government in the stead of government ab extra. The Land Bank of 1740, which embodied the mutual principle, operated vigorously in opposition to the government. Can we wonder that it had to be killed by an arbitrary stretch of the supreme power of Parliament, and by an ex post facto law bearing outrageously on the individual members of the company? For our part, we admire the energy, the confidence in the principle of mutualism, of those members who proposed to go on in spite of Parliament although the Act subjected them to a premiere. If they had gone on, they would simply have anticipated the American Revolution by some 30 years. But where is the warning to future ages? According to Governor Hutchinson's own statement, the fault of the bank was that it would have succeeded too well if it had had a fair trial. Nay, that it would have succeeded in spite of all obstacles had it not been for the exertion of the transcendent power of Parliament. Where is the bank of these degenerate days that has shown anything like the same power of endurance? Some of the existing banks find it difficult to live with the power of government exerted in their favor. The attempt of the Land Bank Company to republicanize gold and silver, and to make all commodities circulate as ready money was, without question, premature. But our author misapprehends the matter, mistaking a transformation of the circulating medium for a mercantile scheme. The vote of the company whereby the directors became traders, was an act for transforming the currency. We do not justify it altogether, for it put the welfare of the cause at too great hazard. But it was, nevertheless, not totally out of harmony with the general system. We remark in conclusion, that the depreciation in the provincial currency was occasioned, not by Land Bank, that is, by mutual paper, which the Parliament forced the issuers, by an arbitrary, vindictive, and tyrannical law, to redeem with interest, but it was occasioned by government paper, professing to be ultimately redeemable in gold and silver. 10. All arguments, therefore, against mutual money, derived from the colonial currency, are foreign to the purpose. The main objections against mutual banking are as follows. 1. It is a novelty, and therefore a chimera of the inventor's brain. 2. It is an old story, borrowed from provincial history, and therefore of no account. How would you have us answer objections like these? Things new or old may be either good or evil. Every financial scheme should stand or fall by its own intrinsic merits, and not be judged from extraneous considerations. Money. The most concise and expressive definition of the term capital, which we have seen in the writings of the political economists, is the one furnished by J. Stuart Mill, in his table of contents. He says, capital is wealth appropriated to reproductive employment. There is, indeed, a certain ambiguity attached to the word wealth. But let that pass. We accept the definition. A tailor has $5 in his money, which he proposes to employ in his business. This money is unquestionably capital, since it is wealth appropriated to reproductive employment, but it may be expended in the purchase of cloth, in the payment of journeymen's wages, or in 100 other ways. What kind of capital, then, is it? It is evidently disengaged capital. Let us say that the tailor takes his money and expends it for cloth. This cloth is also devoted to reproductive employment, and is therefore still capital. But what kind of capital? Evidently, engaged capital. He makes this cloth into a coat. Which coat is more valuable than the cloth, since it is the result of human labor bestowed upon the cloth. But the coat is no longer capital. For it is no longer, so far, at least, as the occupation of the tailor is concerned, capable of being appropriated to reproductive employment. What is it, then? It is that for the creation of which the capital was originally appropriated. It is product. The tailor takes this coat and sells it in the market for $8. Which dollars become to him a new disengaged capital. The circle is complete. The coat becomes engaged capital to the purchaser. And the money is disengaged capital, with which the tailor may commence another operation. Money is disengaged capital, and disengaged capital is money. Capital passes, therefore, through various forms. First it is disengaged capital, then it becomes engaged capital, then it becomes product, afterwards it is transformed again into disengaged capital, thus recommencing its circular progress. The community is happy and prosperous when all professions of men easily exchange with each other the products of their labor. That is, the community is happy and prosperous when money circulates freely, and each man is able with facility to transform his product into disengaged capital, for with disengaged capital, or money, men may command such of the products of labor as they desire, to the extent, at least, of the purchasing power of their money. The community is unhappy, unprosperous, miserable, when money is scarce, when exchanges are effected with difficulty. For notice, that, in the present state of the world, there is never real overproduction to any appreciable extent. For, whenever the baker has too much bread, there are always laborers who could produce that of which the baker has too little, and who are themselves in want of bread. It is when the tailor and baker cannot exchange, that there is want and overproduction on both sides. Whatever, therefore, has power to withdraw the currency from circulation, has power, also, to cause trade to stagnate. Power to overwhelm the community with misery. Power to carry want, and its correlative, overproduction into every artisan's house and workshop. For the transformation of product into disengaged capital is one of the regular steps of production, and whatever withdraws the disengaged capital, or money, from circulation, at once renders this step impossible, and thus puts a drag on all production. There are various kinds of money. But all money is not the same money. There is one money of gold, another of silver, another of brass, another of leather, and another of paper, and there is a difference in the glory of these different kinds of money. There is one money that is a commodity, having its exchangeable value determined by the law of supply and demand, which money may be called though somewhat barbarously merchandise money. As for instance, gold, silver, brass, bank bills, etc. There is another money, which is not a commodity, whose exchangeable value is altogether independent of the law of supply and demand, and which may be called mutual money. Mr. Edward Kellogg says, money becomes worthless whenever it ceases to be capable of accumulating an income which can be exchanged for articles of actual value. The value of money as much depends upon its power of being loaned for an income, as the value of a farm depends upon its natural power to produce. And again, money is valuable in proportion to its power to accumulate value by interest. 11. Mr. Kellogg is mistaken. Money is a commodity in a twofold way, and has therefore a twofold value and a twofold price, one value as an article that can be exchanged for other commodities, and another value as an article that can be loaned out at interest. One price which is determined by the supply and demand of the precious metals, and another price the rate of interest which is determined by the distress of the borrowing community. Mr. Kellogg speaks as though this last value and last price were the only ones deserving consideration. But this is by no means the case, for this last value and price are so far from being essential to the nature of money, that the mutual bank will one day utterly abolish them. The natural value of the silver dollar depends upon the demand and supply of the metal of which it is composed and not upon its artificial power to accumulate value by interest. Legislation has created usury, and the mutual bank can destroy it. Usury is a result of the legislation which establishes a particular commodity as the sole article of legal tender. And, when all commodities are made to be ready money through the operation of mutual banking, usury will vanish.